I used to be so confident, so bold, so brazen. I mean, I was the type of woman where I had the words carefully crafted and was able to speak up for myself without any hesitation. And then somewhere along the way, I feel like I lost it. I feel like someone doesn't see me. I feel like whenever I do have something to say, people don't hear me. And oftentimes I have to repeat myself. Or I feel like in my personal relationships that I'm competing for attention when I'm having an argument or a disagreement that's healthy, right? I feel like whenever I say something that the other person somehow makes me feel like my words, what I feel, my emotions don't matter. And I feel invisible at times. And then there's the times at work when I'm in the boardroom and I used to be the rock star. But lately I've been second guessing myself, not sure what I should say. And then before I could even get the words out, someone else has said exactly what I was going to say. Not only that, I'm called on to explain something, which I know very well. I mean, this is my lane. I'm experienced, I'm talented, I'm gifted. And then something happens where the words that I wanted to say don't exactly come out the way I wanted them to. Does this sound like you? We're going to talk about this and much more. Stay tuned. Welcome to Elevation Solo. I'm Erica Taylor. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. This is a space where we discuss those quiet mindset shifts so that we can create real inner peace and freedom. This is also the space where we're going to talk about reclaiming our voice. And this particular video is so important because it latches on to the other two videos in the Reclaim series. When we talk about reclaiming our voice and going back to the examples that I mentioned earlier, many times we as women sometimes don't even know that we have lost our voice. It takes a situation or a circumstance for us to finally realize that who we used to be has changed. It's not a bad thing, but it's also one that we need to take an inventory of and ask ourselves a couple of questions. Most of the times when we talk about our voice, we think that it means that someone is talking loudly or someone has made a point or a given point. But what I want us to focus in on this, when we talk about our voice, look at the voice as energy. So when you walk into a room, take any room that you can think of that you've walked into, you can feel the energy. You don't see it, you feel it. It's the same thing with the voice. You feel the vibration. The vibration tells you the truth of that person. It also shows the authenticity of that person. It also tells you the capability of that person. And it tells you if that person feels like they should be in the room or not be in that room. It also feeds and gives you information about the wisdom. And also not only that, but the representation of that person. So the voice is powerful. That's why when you talk about our personal and professional relationships, it is so important for us to do the work first before we can actually have a seat at the table. Now, this is an imaginary table. This is a table where you feel like you are visible instead of invisible. And sometimes in life, things happen where we start kind of dimming our light and we don't show up to be our authentic self. Not because we don't want to, because frankly, sometimes people have been kind of like a bully, or they have had a dominant presence in the conversation and the relationship for so long. And so you're used to not sharing what's really important to you. And you're used to not having the hard conversations. Now, when we get to this point, we lose a sense of ourselves. We lose our footing. And so in this video, the reason why this is so important is because it's important for us to get our voice back. If you feel like right now that you are in a situation, or even that you operate at work, where you're not being able to really express who you really are. And I'm not talking about unhealthy ways. I'm talking about healthy ways, where if someone says something about you and gives a perception about you and does this thing where they talk over and don't allow you to have that space to be able to say really, or to actually refute, or say you affirm with what they're saying. If somebody doesn't give you that permission, I'm going to teach you in this video how to get that permission back, right? Because I think this is key. Sometimes when we have been doing this for such a long time, people are used to the familiar, and you are too. You've been operating this way for years, and so now it's time to take it back and reclaim your courageousness, because it is there. If you feel like sometimes when you're talking to maybe an adult child or your children and trying to get people to understand, or even a neighbor, or you're at the grocery store and you're trying to share something, and for some reason the words are not coming out the way you want to, or you just need to have a say in something, or you want to give your opinion, and you feel like that too is hard to do, this is what this is about. Because I don't feel like we lose our voice intentionally. I feel like sometimes it happens in an unintentional way. And we forget what our power was. And that's the step one. You have to know what your power is. And how do you do that? I'm glad you're asking that question. And in the comments, please comment to me if this sounds like you. So the first part to this is, say you are having a conversation with someone and they say something you really don't agree with. Instead of you head nodding and going along with the flow, now you can say, you know, I hear your point, but let me share another thought about this, or let me share another perspective, or let me share my perspective. The my is the central part of this. Now, when we are used to dimming our light, when we use the word my, it becomes hard to say, because when we say my, it sounds like we're being selfish. And that's not what this is about. This is about making sure people know that you are visible. Now, this does not mean you have to be loud, or you have to speak louder than what your normal voice range is. It's just being able to use certain words to let people know that you have something else to say, or that you like to chime into the conversation, because it's important. I can give you another example about this. Let's say you're at a networking function, or any function. You're going to a party, a celebration. You don't know the people, right? And there's 3 people who are having a conversation about something. And you want to chime in because you want to be able to, join in the conversation and allow them to know who you are as well. Instead of sitting on the side or like on the peripheral and trying to find out when to jump in, you can start with just kind of doing a little small laughter, and then being able to jump in where it's appropriate, and being able to state how you feel about something. Or if they say something that resonates with you, that you're familiar with, or that you've had the same experience, share that as well. What happens is sometimes we dim ourselves. We don't allow ourselves the space to be able to move into the direction. Instead, we move away from the direction. And we start using words like we're introverted, right? We really didn't want to be at this party. This is not really important. But sometimes networking is the opportunity for us to open up possibilities. So it's one of the skills that we probably should kind of tap into. I digress. So the first part to this is to have silence. What I want you to do is ask yourself some questions. And these questions are, what do you hear about yourself? In other words, when you look back at conversations that you've had, how do you see how you show up? What do you think others are getting from you? What do you think that their perception is of you? And this is key, because what happens is when we know, or have an idea of how we're showing up to others, we can best kind of identify what the outcome is going to be. And many of us don't even do this exercise. We just kind of say, oh, it's what it is, or I'm just who I am, or I'm just a quiet person. I really didn't have a lot to say or to contribute. Sound familiar? Because a lot of us do this. The other thing is, what do you think? What do you think about your interpersonal relationships? What do you feel about the dynamics when you're talking to people? What do you feel that's keeping you from not being visible, but moving to invisible? Why do you feel you don't speak up? Why do you feel like you don't share your emotions? Why do you feel like you don't share your feelings? Why do you feel like whenever there's a conflict situation that it could go sideways if you give your opinion? And I'm not saying this is you, but I know several women feel this way. But if this is you, comment and let me know. The other piece to this is, why are you afraid to say anything? What's the real fear behind it? Because there's a fear. Is it a fear that you may say something that may sound like it doesn't make sense? Do you feel like you have a fear, or you're afraid that they may judge you? Do you feel like you may be afraid that this conversation could go on further, and then you're like, I don't know how I'm going to show up, and they may ask me to do something and I may not be prepared? Sound familiar? Because some people have imposter syndrome. This is where a lot of this comes in. So it's important for us to do this assessment first before we jump into the real work. Because when we lose a sense of our voice, when we start dimming our light, and I'll keep saying that, because when we don't use our voice and orchestrate it in ways that we can, we actually are dimming our light. And it doesn't start with for someone else's perception or image of us. It all starts from our own perception and image of ourselves. And a lot of times we don't talk about that, because we'll say that they just see me a certain way, and so that they can think whatever they want to think, and it's fine. But sometimes I feel like that's an excuse. And so what we have to do, or we can do, is to identify for ourselves what's important to us. Why are we not showing what we need to gain from this? We have our needs as well. So if we have something to share, we have a viewpoint about something, or there was a situation that happened that caused you to feel a certain way, then share that. Because the only way someone or you can change it is if it's out in the open. And sometimes as women, we learn from childhood to access our quiet, respectability, I call it, where it's respectful to not even give an interjection on how I really feel. Or it's respectful to let the other person go ahead and speak, and then, eventually I'll have my time. But let me ask you, how often does your time come back around? It's just like this. Whenever you are having a conversation, you want to say something, and you didn't say something, that person's gone in their car at home, and you're gone at your car at home, and then it's left unsaid, right? That space is left unsaid. Not because you did it intentionally, but because you did it unintentionally. And so because of that, you didn't cause yourself to be powerful and to show the power that is within you. Now, this is a lot, so I'm going to talk about practicing those small truths. What I would like for us to do is moving to the action piece to this, is to find out or come up with 2 sentences, if you will, that you feel comfortable with saying whenever you have a place in a conversation that you need to share, right? Because what happens is we say, oh, I'll get to this. I got the perfect idea. I got the perfect words when it happens. And I will tell you it won't happen. But if you have these 2 rehearsed sentences, and I'm saying this because just like I mentioned, in order for you to have confidence, it's a practiced pattern. People with confidence, they're not always born with it, right? There is a sense of practicing. So you have to practice so that you become better and more fluid with how you say things, how you show up, and and what's going to be heard. So the first part to this is, you know what? I don't agree with that point, but let me tell you why. And that is your time to be able to tell people where you feel, what's your position, what's your standpoint. The other thing is to ask questions. If someone says something about you, maybe they are providing a perception about you, and you feel like it's faulty, don't sit there in that conversation and allow them to just continue on. You say, you know what? Wait, I want to interject here because I don't see that. This is what I see about myself. But in order for you to be able to do that, you have to have an assessment of who you are, because it takes work and it takes a little bit of practice to be able to jump in a conversation and say that. But it's powerful and it's needed. Reclaiming your voice is a way for you to take up space in the world, your space, not anyone else's. And that's why when I talk about energy, that's why your voice is the same thing as energy. It mirrors that because it takes up space. So it's not the sense where you are combative. It's not that you're raising your voice. It's all about the word choices that you use. It's all about how you find the pause in the conversation and use that to your advantage so that you can jump in and say what you want to say. Another example can be if someone says something, asks you to do something, or ask you how do you feel about something, right? And it's maybe one of those layered questions. You got to take you some time to kind of think about it. Don't be so quick to share what it is because you haven't really thought about it, right? So be authentic about it. You say, that's a good point. I'm gonna need some time and I'm gonna get back with you. That's all you gotta say. And the reason why you wanna say that is because you are showing them how to treat you. You're also letting them know you have a viewpoint. And you're also showing them that you have a sacredness about yourself, meaning you're going to honor yourself first before you share what you feel and what you think. This doesn't cause people to be on the defensive. It actually causes people to respect you and your position. Now you have to follow up, but instead of being so quick to say whatever it is, allow yourself some time to sift through. And if you don't understand what someone is saying, tell them, I don't quite understand. Can you repeat it? Or, I'm not familiar with that. Can you share more? These are some phrases that you can use, and you can write these down if you want, so that you can feel better and more practice when these situations arise. Many times as women, it's not that we don't know what to say sometimes, it's that we just don't know how to articulate it. And that happens because, again, we're used to being the respectable person. We're allowing people to have their respect, right? We're allowing them to honor themselves. And we don't always insert ourselves in the honor equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that around and we're going to make sure that we honor ourselves in the conversation. The other thing is, let's say you are in a relationship and it's a conversation you're having. It's getting kind of heated. It does happen, right? What you want to do is be able to say things like, you know what? I'm really not ready to talk about this just yet. You're gonna have to give me some time. Right? Because I don't quite see what you're saying and I want to sit back and kind of sift through. Now you don't have to use all of those words, but doing that lets your partner know, or your husband or your boyfriend or girlfriend, let them know that you have something valuable to share, but you need time. And it doesn't cause you to get in a situation where you dim your light again in the conversation. So that someone doesn't go ahead and provide a perception or tell you what you should feel. You're being able to articulate what you feel. So it's a win-win situation rather than a win-lose situation. The last piece to this is learning how to trust your intuition with this. This is so important. And I talk about discernment. This is where this shows up at when I talk about trust your voice. Because what's important is you need to honor yourself. So you need to honor yourself and trust yourself. Trust what you think is valid. I'll say it again. Trust what you think is valid. Sometimes as women and also as men are guilty of this as well, we'll second guess ourselves. We'll think that what we feel about something it doesn't really make sense, or that it's not really a big deal, or that it really doesn't really mean anything, or I don't even need to share this. This is so insignificant. But it is significant. It's how you feel. It's what you think. So what you think and how you feel are just as important as the other person, is what they think and what they feel. And sometimes when we're used to going along with the flow, it becomes easier for us just to go along with the flow. But sometimes we need to stand up for ourselves and assert ourselves in a powerful way. And you may not be ready to talk or ready to share or ready to have a discussion. Allow yourself space to be able to share that with others. You don't have to be so quick on the draw to be able to say whatever you want to say. Somebody asks you a question, you have to answer the question. The other part to this reclaiming is sometimes people will ask you questions that really aren't any of their business. And when we are used to dimming our voice, we find ourselves answering those questions. And we really didn't want to give that information. So let's practice with saying, why do you ask? Why is that important? Just like that. And when I say these two, why do you ask? Why is that important? What's important to do is to do a very long pause. Don't speak. Allow them to speak. You are taking back your power. You're also letting them know, like, what you're asking me is inappropriate, but in a non-confrontational manner, but coming from a question. So I'm asking you, why is that important? Because sometimes when we are trying to find our voice, we find ourselves answering questions we don't even really want to answer. And when people ask us questions that are really none of our business, none of their business, it is okay for us to let them know, like, I don't really want to tell you that. And I find that as women who are used to being compliant, like going back to people pleasing, and used to making sure that everyone feels good, everybody is good, and making sure that the conversation is flowing and that type of thing, and making sure that you are being engaged in a conversation and being able to share. But what happens is when people ask you private questions, it becomes you just go ahead and answer the question. But here's my thing, and I've had this experience before. Whenever you have that feeling inside of you that kind of goes, I don't like answering this, or I don't want to answer that, pay attention. That's your radar to let you know that you don't want to answer that question. And ask yourself, why do you have such a hard time with letting people know that they are really crossing the line? Sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we allow people to have too much of a place at our table, and they haven't earned it. So these are just a couple of tips to remind you about reclaiming your voice. You can use this in your personal and your professional life, and I hope that you find that this will be helpful for you. Understand this, that your voice wasn't diminished in an intentional manner. Sometimes it's unintentional. Sometimes it's your upbringing. Sometimes it's your familiar territory of what you've been doing for so long. Sometimes it's just a situation. And sometimes it's not paying attention to discernment. Like there's something in you that's telling you that this person, whenever they are talking to you, you feel like they're talking down to you. And you start kind of working in the same environment in which they're expecting you to. Pay attention to that, because if you feel that way constantly, that's your discernment letting you know something's not right. Also, Allow yourself to have space. You're valuable. You're worthy. Your viewpoint, your perspective, no matter how big or how small that someone thinks it is important. This is part of being an elevated man or woman, is making sure that you do reclaim your voice. Making sure that you do say really how you feel. And letting people know that you do have emotions. And that when someone does something that is unsettling or even good, go ahead and say that. Like, I really appreciated your compliment that you gave me. I really appreciated how you treat others. And at the same time, letting people know when they have been off-putting. This is all a part of reclaiming your voice. I hope this video has been very helpful for you. And if any of you are going through anything right now, put it down. Put it down. Because reclaiming your voice is the measurement of your value and your self-worth. And you are worthy. You are worthy of getting it back. Make sure that you share this video with others who can benefit. This is a series, so there will be more videos forthcoming. Until then, have a great day, and I will see you at the next video.